everyone. My name is Kylie Davis and founder and president of Proptech Australia. And it is great to see you all joining us here today for our Proptech panel on AI and machine learning. And I'm really looking forward to a really deep dive conversation today. I am here today on land of the Yuin Nation, home of the Budjela Manji people on the very beautiful south coast of New South Wales. It is an area that covers from Lake Conjola up in the north near Ulladulla and stretches all the way down to just above Narooma? No, I think it comes down to about our mates down at Powerhouse at Bermagui. So we're about half an hour past Bateman's Bay where I am. And so before I begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, Proptech Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to the elders past, present, emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders joining us here today. And I'd also especially like to thank the support of Stone and Chalk, our sponsors who make all of our Proptech panels possible. And if you don't know Stone and Chalk, it was founded as a not-for-profit in Sydney in 2015 to help fintech startups commercialise and grow. And from 40 startups in 2015, it now has well over 200 startups in Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide, covering all areas of emerging tech, including PropTech. And I think at last count, they had around 20, 30 PropTechs that call Stone and Chalk home and have recently moved up to the new Tech Central. So now, is there any hotter topic in technology at all at the moment than AI? From the launch of ChatGPT in November 2022, the adoption of AI has captured the collective imagination and become one of the most popular features used to promote technology. And PropTech is absolutely no exception. And in the recent PropTech Awards, a whopping 75% of our entries featured AI. From its initial launch in helping agents write real estate copy to finding leads and writing better emails, AI is now automating workflows, analysing property and client data, assessing risk, predicting risk, asset maintenance requirements and modelling, and the fastest way to property ownership scenarios, just to name a few. But there are anxieties around using AI. So what are the important things that all clients of PropTech, whether they're real estate agents, property owners or facility managers, what do they need to know about the AI operating in the back end of their systems? What are the questions they need to be asking to manage AI safely? And what guidelines should we as PropTechs be following to come up with consistent and trusted AI experience across all of our clients? Because no one wants a Skyline. My panel of experts in this area are recent winners from the PropTech Awards who all boasted AI in their entries. Damien Merchant from AI analytics platform Sonar. Hey, Damien.
Hey, how are you?
Great. Leann Jones from modular banking platform Nimo Industries.
Hello, everyone.
And facility management expert Aonghus Stevens from Asseti. Hi, Aonghus.
Hi, Kylie. How are you?
And they are joined by the creator of the first MCP protocol. And yes, I realize that protocol is a double up when I say MCP protocols, but sorry, because who knows what the TLAs mean. David Howell from Dynamic Methods and Forms Lab. Hey, David, welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yep. So look, welcome everyone. So because we have so much to dive into, what I'm going to do is ask everyone just to sort of introduce their PropTech and the problems that they solve and why AI is ideally designed to support the solutions in your space. And then we're going to open it up to a broader conversation. So as the newest PropTech in the space, Damien, have you launched yet? Because I know you were very pre-launch when you entered the awards, but let's kick off with you. Tell us what Sonar does and for who and why AI is well suited in your space.
Yeah, thanks, Kylie. So we are doing a soft launch in this. So we've got up to 20 clients now, 20 different agencies using it. So Sonar's a performance platform that's built for residential real estate leaders. We unify data from sales, listing performance data, coming from CRMs, finance data, market data, and bring that into a unified view for the leaders of that business. So they could say, who's on track, what conversations need to be had, which listings are performing and which aren't, those sort of insights, we're really trying to give the right signal at the right time. So yeah, and I think AI is very good at that. It's taking big data sets, finding signals in the noise, so to speak. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
And so could you have done this 5 years ago, or is it only something that is now possible?
Yeah, no, definitely not. You could have done it 5 years ago, but it would have been a hell of a lot more expensive. So,
Right.
the availability of tools in the space has just, exploded. And so, the cost of compute has come right down, and the tools available, you could have done it with big teams, but now you can just go a lot further with less resource. So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So, Leann, let's talk about Nimo. What does Nimo do exactly, and who are your main customers, and why is AI required in your solution?
Thanks, Kylie. Much like Damien, actually, we unify data. So we are a digital online banking solution. We're a white label product, SaaS. That means that our main customers are banks and lenders, ADIs and non-ADIs, and really in turn, then the end customer might be Sally on the farm who wants to buy a property or refinance her farm. She's our end user. So what we offer is that complete digital experience from origination, application, assessment, contracts, consents, and all the way through to settlement and fund disbursement of funds. And then we still provide that one unified platform to manage and service that particular loan. And there's portals there for the broker, for the lender, and for the end customer. So it's a much more seamless experience from both the end customer, but equally for the user, which are our banks and lenders, and importantly for our broker. So what it means in real terms, like Sally might be wanting to refinance or, equity release to access funds for some yellow goods. It means she can do it all digitally through her portal. So rather than using different sources, different off-ramps for example, digital ID, taking time to go and see a broker or a branch manager to get those funds. In terms of AI, I'm probably a little bit like Damien, we've got a really comprehensive platform, sophisticated workflows and rule sets, and it's really quite comprehensive. We call one platform to master them all. But there are things that we're doing lately with AI that we probably were unable to do 8 years ago, to be honest, but we're able to offer things with more resources, more tools, but more economically. And I think that's a really important part. Means for some of the pain points that we're solving, if I think about a key pain point with lenders and their core banking functionality, a lot of our, in the ecosystem of property, once you take out that property, it's got to be managed, that loan's got to be managed, and current lenders are reliant on certain legacy systems, or they have to build their own. They just don't have the funds. So when they're using Nimo to use AI to do a lot of the complex thinking, we can do it way more economically, smarter, a better user and a customer experience. And what that means in turn for the property ecosystem, we can support more new starters, more offerings in the market for lenders to use, whether it might be an equity release product or a particular view on how you might want to access your lending and your funds. We enable a lot of those sort of tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 lenders to be on the market that consumers can then access. The second really important use case for us is in the broker segment. We know that 90% of the brokers, of our 17,000 brokers in the Australian market, use the system NextGen. So we use AI in a very clever way to populate, extract data to make that a seamless experience rather than having information that gets mismatched, erroneous data, etc. So stuff, to Damien's point, that we couldn't have done years ago, or we could have, but it would have been way more expensive, and to be able to offer that to our lenders.
Just to make sure that I'm clear on how the AI is working in your system. So your legacy industry has always been like lots of different silos of, accounts and styles of lending and all of that sort of stuff. Are you sitting on top of that, or have you or is the AI, and which is where the AI kind of pulls all of its magic together, or have you rebuilt all of those structures into one big thing?
We're our own proprietary platform. So if you like, our platform, our developers have built it from end to end, and a bit like a toaster, in that journey, there are different off-ramps and on-ramps in which we work with other third-party suppliers, whether it's digital ID, AML, KYC, statements, verification of income, etc. But the way in which we treat the data, we use agents and tools to be able to treat that and streamline it in our data pool, which makes the data safer and very clever what we can do with the data to make that seamless experience for the lender and for the customer. Property valuation data is a really good example, like being able to offer different property valuation options at a more economical level for brokers and for banks is one of the things that we can do, and we do that because of AI.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Aonghus, congratulations, because you won quite a few awards on the night. So tell us a little bit about Asseti and the problems that you guys are solving and the role of AI in that.
Yeah, absolutely. We did have fun on the night too, Kylie, so thank you for that. In terms of Asseti, we are used by distributed property portfolios to predict, plan and operate those assets, basically. So our ideal customer, or the sort of key user of our platform, has sites across many areas, many geographies, and the challenges that come with that. We focus primarily at the start on condition data, so building like asset hierarchies and defects and these sort of things, defect registers. We've moved beyond that now into more of the general operations function that these companies have. But in terms of how AI sits in there, and sort of this we'll probably touch on this a bit later too, but the transition of like system of record to system of work to agentic systems is sort of like the way AI is generally considered in these products anyway, or in products generally. So it's like, okay, how can we, in the system of record sense, we're building source data for these customers to use, and that's still a really core part of what we do. And so that's where more machine learning on very large sort of repeat data sets that come in to enable us to generate this data really quickly and deliver it, not quite an insight to a customer, but generate some sort of rows in a table, for want of a better description. Then a system of action stuff is like, okay, how can we use AI in a product sense? So this is more customer facing, this sort of stuff, and how can we help the customer surface and automate some of their action, but they would still do that in their system. And then the agentic stuff, which is coming out in the product, is almost like hands off. So it just like does the whole thing for them. And they're sort of the ways that we use AI. So we use AI to more rapidly generate the data that's critical to our system, but a customer may not actually see that or interface with that AI. And then there's the actual customer-facing product sense as well.
And so from a customer-facing product, guys, if you're not speaking, can I get you to pop onto mute? And that would be great. Aonghus, from a customer-facing thing, what is the AI doing from their point of view?
Yeah, so for a customer, there's it's obviously originating data for them to see, so they see that data still, but very quickly. Then there's the sort of what we call the Asseti agent, but more like a chatbot functionality that sits in there to help them really understand what's happening in their data. And let them interrogate that to a level of depth that they can. Because customers that we deal with might have like 100 million records in their asset hierarchy or something. So there's like a ton of data in there that they're really sort of working with. And then it's also, how can they, so say they're using our Asset OS functionality to take a defect, generate a work order, rather than them setting that workflow up. It's like, okay, you've done this 10 times in the past. Would you like to automate this little section? That's sort of like where they would use it today. And then where it's heading, I guess, in the agentic piece is, okay, how does all that happen? And that's where, like, I think agentic is sort of seen as this nirvana, but really it's AI in the sense of how we look at it and how I think the industry is looking at it is like, how can we deliver an outcome for the customer as quickly as that outcome needs to be reasonably achieved? So in the sense that we generate, we take a data signal of some sort, we ostensibly want to deliver the outcome for that as instantly as possible, because the value of that insight or that signal starts to degrade. And so that's really what AI is to a customer, is how quickly can we deliver the outcome that the customer needs. for as little effort as possible for that customer while they understand it.
Yeah, got it. Fantastic. Okay. And so, David, tell me a little bit about what Forms Live does and the role of AI in your workflows.
Okay, so Forms Live is a SaaS platform which has all the real estate forms and agreements. So everything from residential sales, property management, commercial, rural, things like that. And I guess we're doing things a little bit differently in terms of what we're doing with AI. Rather than using AI internally, which we are, with vibe coding and things like that, we're actually building tools on top of our platform specifically for AI. And you said earlier that we've developed an MCP server, which is a protocol to help the agentic AI, or any AI really, use things in the real world, because ultimately most AI platforms are very enclosed, and you can't do things like you can't ask AI what the time was. In the early days, you couldn't ask it to send a form. You couldn't check to see if forms were out for signing unless you had all these tools and things like that. So we're actually building the tools for AI rather than building AI tools, AI within the platform itself. So it's a little bit of a different tactic, but it aligns heavily with what Aonghus was saying. So we're kind of the other end of it. I think Aonghus is down this end. Processing hundreds of millions of records is a perfect AI case because it's kind of self-contained and it's very good at data analytics and NLP and things like that. But then you want to be able to do those real world things after you've done all that analysis, and that's where MCP servers can come in and the LLMs can actually use that information and do something out in the real world. So that's what we're doing.
Cool. And it sounds like, Aonghus, that you're starting to do that as well too, as part of your experience that people are having with you.
Yeah, and I think that's where absolutely we deliver the outcome for the customer. I think an interesting piece around the relevancy for the customer is, and this is our this is my view and our view on it as a business, but we can help our customer achieve the quickest and best outcome by the proprietary data we hold. So by inherently they're giving us the stuff that we understand, because that's the value of what we provide. But certainly we see the outcome, like where we've had the worst outcome, or we've had the least value sort of provided to a customer, is where we're disconnected from the outcome. And so that's really our focus, is how can we retain the whole life cycle of a decision, because as soon as that decision gets closed out, that actually provides us the information as well. And so this it's definitely a journey, absolutely. And I think staying up to date with AI in a product sense for us as well is really critical, like in a background and otherwise.
There's a really big Venn diagram here, though, isn't there, where data and absolutely overlap, because you can't AI without data. And I think what I'm hearing in all of these examples is that AI has this capability, obviously, to chew through huge amounts of data in ways that that human brains just simply couldn't do previously, and that has taken us weeks, months, years even of manual processing. But and that sounds awesome. But where some of the either risk or complication comes from is that the AI works better when you add your data sets to it. But where does your data end and start once it's sort of sitting inside the AI? So so what you've just outlined there, Aonghus, is this whole idea that if you try to keep them separate, it won't work as well. But when you overlap them, what you know from dealing with whopping great data sets sitting inside facilities management all the time means that you almost, as a customer, get to sense check your data against that, and then have the AI start to give you the insights based against your data set and your own.
Yes, like an example there would be, and absolutely, like the tailoring of it at a customer level is sort of critical. So we think about it like at a product level, then at like regional. So the way someone in the US does something to Australia is very different. So we sort of have it in the regional level. Then we'd have it at like the workspace level or the customer level. Then we'd have it at the actual user level. So they're like the tailoring of the product or of the AI for a customer. But the way, one customer fixes leaves in their gutters, for an example, would be vastly different to someone else. And that directly impacts the sort of outcome of a guttering component across its life cycle. So for us, if we can tee into their sort of CMMS data and see historically how they've fixed things, we may actually make a decision earlier for the customer. Like we might increase the criticality level of a defect repair because we know it takes them longer to repair it, as an example. And so they're the sort of ways where, like, actually knowing what a customer, how a company is operated is really critical as well for us to provide them the best outcome as quickly as possible.
We're doing something very similar in the form space, because and you couldn't do this without the AI. Well, same as before, you could, but very expensive in terms of machine learning. But simple things like analyzing how your forms are coming in and how quickly they're being electronically signed and things like that. So you might see, the AI might see that there's a pattern, or there's, for tenancy agreements coming in and getting signed, and there might be one or two which are not quite completed or executed. And rather than you finding out later and having to, reactively fix something, the AI can actually analyze that and suggest that perhaps it might be worth giving Kylie a call this morning because she's not quite yet finished her tenancy agreement. And just really simple things like that could save you 5, 10, 15 minutes, or it could save you a lot of effort down the road. And there's, it's kind of AI working for you on those types of scenarios.
And I think the magic in that sort of scenario is, like, you think to, say, Damien and Leann's sort of use case, and it's like, okay, can they see the correlation between a delay in this form being signed and an actual at-risk loan or at-risk?
You start joining them together.
It's like, okay, how can we just, like, so in Damien's sense, the customer, by the sounds of it, is the agent or the office, and sort of maximizing the gross commissions effectively for that business. So how can the AI deliver the best outcome for that customer? And that's the piece where I think this becomes really interesting, just like continue. And that's why it's not a destination, it's just like, it's just a continual evolution, which I think is the exciting part about it.
Can I add to that, to your point, Aonghus? It's about, how do we best serve our customers and the banks that serve the customers. But I think you've made the point before, it's about knowing who you're dealing with and knowing what happens to the data. And we know of examples in our industry and with other players where you might think that AI is being processed or it's happening onshore, and we know of examples where it's happening offshore. We talk about data sovereignty, and one of those risks, Kylie, I know that's what you're keen to explore and what people are perhaps anxious or concerned about. When we think about Australian banking, there are really tight regulations around what we do with our data and where we do it. So if I was to think fast forward into 40 minutes from now, what I'd leave people with is to consider who your partners are and who you're doing business with, and where and how do they keep that data, and where does it happen? It's almost like the analogy: lift up the hood of the car. What do you see under the car?
Yes. So one of the, that consumer and finance data, Leann, is often seen as highly, it's private, it's, and it's kind of quite personal. How do you guys protect that? Isn't that where people get anxious around AI? What are your protections in that place?
Yeah, look, I think anxiety, absolutely. What people fear what they don't know, and we use the analogy a lot in business. It's the clear box versus the black box, and we've always been using AI up until now. 2023, everyone was kind of talking about it. 2024, people are dipping their toe. We saw lots of random acts of AI, and I think we're seeing considered acts of applications of AI, and I think that's where we're at in terms of advice. I'd be considering making sure there's considered use of AI. So when we think about the use case in Nimo and how we keep it protected, we make sure who we partner with, we make sure the data sovereignty. We're dealing with data and processing it onshore. Of course, there's guidelines that have been introduced in the country, and of course we've got privacy legislation, etc., that protects us. But I guess how we protect what we do, it's all proprietary built, so we're very careful who and we do business with and how. But naturally, of course, consumers are really concerned about it. When I think about our lenders, though, it's a really interesting mix. When we come across decision makers, whether it's board members or C-suites or heads of or whoever they are, they're really excited. Like AI is the buzzword, and it's like this, a balancing act between really, really excited. They want to know that you're innovating, but are you safe and secure and stable, and is my data protected? And that's our job, to be able to answer that question for them and give them that the safety in that answer.
Yeah, I like. Sorry, just to jump in, but Leann, your clear box v black box analogy is a good one, because I find that's something our customers are always wanting to avoid, is that black box scenario. If you're giving them an insight, they want to know, how did you arrive at that? Where is the source data coming from?
Yeah.
How is that being calculated? Those sort of fundamental questions. I just don't want to be in the dark around that. So,
no. And the risks are too high. We can't be.
Yeah.
So one of the things that AI is letting us do, I guess, at the moment is iterate new tech or new new versions of our platforms, or code really quickly and things like that. And that, I guess, compares to against the anxiety and also against the slowness of adoption. Do we think that AI, from our customers, do we think that AI is going to kind of create a bigger gap between kind of customer adoption and where the tech can go, or do we think that actually the sexiness of AI is going to basically drag everyone forward a bit faster?
Well, I think AI, ultimately the biggest value of AI is that it's a easy user experience environment. So you think about your mobile phone, and if you're using OpenAI or Claude, and you can have a conversation with your computer effectively, and then you add the MCP server tools on top, and then you've almost got a mini assistant right in your phone, and you can just talk to that assistant rather than having to type and be on a desktop or be on a tablet or anything like that. So to me, the natural language passing, so the NLP, is probably the biggest advantage we've got right now. I think long term or down the track, the value around the power of AI will emerge, but I think we're not quite there yet. So things like context rot and memory and all those types of issues are really the biggest barriers at the moment. But
did you
ultimately,
say context rot?
Context rot,
yes. Fading over time.
Yeah, so the more you feed the AI over time, it kind of starts to get a bit confused. I'm using hallucinate and all those types of things.
I was going to go hallucinations. We need AI whisperers and
yeah. So prompting and all those types of tools. But and the other one is RAG, around storage of this information, making it easy for AI to use and utilize, I think is really the barriers we're coming up against at the moment. That's where MCP servers can help, because, for example, in New South Wales, we've created a termination notice wizard, because the latest legislation changes have made it quite more comprehensive in terms of having to get a compliant termination notice, and that includes gathering evidence from the landlord and things like that. So what we do is we build your regular finite state machine type workflow. Then we bring it into AI through MCP servers and the tools around that. So then the AI can use that workflow without having to learn how to do it, if that makes sense. So whereas if it was a person, you have to run through the details and how get them to understand the workflow. But through the MCP tools, you can actually guide the LLM through the workflow programmatically, and that's probably the biggest advantage that we've got around our MCP servers.
So, David, is that creating sort of one of the like a risk mitigation, in that if you ask the AI to identify if Damien we're picking on you, but if Damien is a good tenant, or if he's not, and if maybe Damien had an argument with a landlord in the past and therefore that's kind of been out there but it got resolved, but if it's still hanging around, are the tools able to say but disregard X, Y, Z, or?
Look,
Like,
we're more around the compliance side of things. So making sure as a business, the customer is doing everything by the book. So less about managing that, but it's the way I see AI now is they're almost like a junior or an apprentice. You know, so you shouldn't give them the tools to the office.
and then the
Sorry, the
Ferrari.
keys to the office. You know, we've all heard in the development community, the software development community, you hear of people who have hooked AI up to their production database, and it's decided that it's going to remove a whole bunch of records and put a whole bunch of mock information in there. And you know, so you can't give it everything. And again,
who did that deserve that to happen, David?
Exactly. That is true. But that's the thing. You wouldn't give your apprentice, production access to your database, or let alone write access to your database. So they get what they deserve. But they're the things people are trying to do. Our focus is around security and privacy, so that and that's the advantage. It should be the advantage of MCP servers, if they're done correctly, that you can't get yourself in trouble like that. You know. So
you need layers of access.
Well,
what
that's
I'm
exactly
hearing
right.
here is if you're a real estate client or a PropTech client in any way, shape, or form, one of the first questions on your list should be: do you let the AI iterate off your product?
I think David's scenario though, and think about like agentic stuff. So in the sense of an agentic system, where it is a system of action, you actually need it to be able to create, read, update, delete. It has to be able to do that. And so
you can limit it. So, we can say, look, we can create forms, finalize them, read them, analyze them, but you couldn't send an email to a customer or a client or a tenant or a thing like that. So we can restrict
this is your piece, Kylie, around like, how does it actually, like the productization of AI then is this piece where how do you actually, and this is a big piece of like, I think a bit of a trend. People just go, we'll just put AI in and see what happens. But it results
you can code it on your Apple phone, and you can learn how to do that, in 60 days.
Proper nasty stuff. Right? But it's like this divergence of the product, and it's like, okay, who is the customer, and what outcome are you selling them, and how does AI deliver that more coherently? Whereas I think, like in the sense of people putting like an LLM, over the top of their product. Nothing wrong with that necessarily, if that helps people. But, if all of a sudden it's then taking, insights from Google search and feeding those in, and it's like, okay, well, what is your customer actually doing in your product that this delivers faster or better for? And it could result in actually a more diluted and less coherent experience. It often does for the customer. And I think that's where the promise of AI has failed, in that everyone has just put AI in, and the 80% of people, products that haven't actually focused on the outcome of the customer. Like, I can tell you, not a single one of our customers gives a crap about AI. Like, they couldn't care about AI. Yeah. And if a customer says like, AI, I'm really interested, they're 12 months away from buying. So it's, for us, it's okay, how do they use it? Everything a customer interfaces with in our system is driven by AI. There's people that sit across it, there's QA, et cetera, that sits there, but every single aspect of it. But you won't find almost a single piece of our marketing that has AI in it, because that doesn't matter to our community or our cohort of customers.
I agree with that. I actually agree with David's comment. I feel like in terms of our ecosystem, we're toddlers. I've heard that a few times, and I completely agree. I feel like we're just learning to walk, where there are some missteps that we see. And we had just the other day, I was actually chatting to one of our developers who had heard from one of his cohort, and they were looking at someone's code on a new app, and there were exposed APIs and vulnerabilities everywhere that, we need to be really clever and know what we're looking for, and again, know where those vulnerabilities, and look with a closer eye. So I agree with that, David. And Aonghus, I also agree with you. I've seen too many examples of we're starting with AI, and it's not the starting point. The customer has got to be the starting point. If AI is part of the solution, that's great, but there might be other ways that we can solve for things. It just happens that we're able to extend perhaps some of those solutions a bit more with AI. I heard at one of the conferences I was emceeing a few months ago, one of our T2 banks, in one of the Australian T2 banks, they've got a AI first strategy and AI first policy. And I'm like, I thought that was I was curious, because to me that implied everything will be AI orientated. Yeah, and it was a bank we all know. So I thought that was really curious. And I think we need to remember it's got to start with the customer. The customer does not care if it's AI. They want to know what the experience is going to be like. And if we can make that smoother for them or better or more intelligent, that's what we've got to stay focused on.
Damien, we haven't heard from you for a while. So, a real estate agent, a real estate principals, are they keen to get into AI? Are they? Where's their head at?
I think there's cautious optimism, but there is a lot of fear mongering out there around AI. Like people, is this going to replace me, or fear of missing out, or I mean, real estate's still such a fundamental people orientated industry. Agents are thinking about where's the next buyer for their listing coming from, or where's their next listing coming from. Principals are thinking about, how do I keep my great staff and attract other great staff and, up my market share and, create a point of difference. I feel like sometimes we in the Proptech community can maybe think they're thinking too much about us, but really what all these guys are saying is map whatever you're doing to the problem that you're trying to solve for your customer. AI is a tool. It's a co-pilot. It's not a decision maker. If you're AI first, I think you're in danger of actually becoming just producing gimmicky stuff that amplifies noise. We've learned a lot, from starting where it's like, we're taking so much data in, and then it's like, well, how do you cut through and actually isolate and get to the real problem and the metrics that really matter? Some of that's AI, like we're using it. We're pretty lightweight in ML. We started off being pretty heavy and sort of, unsupervised learning, and we went pull back and had to really put the guardrails in. These large language models can hallucinate. So, we had to put some really stringent guardrails on that and vectorize stuff. So it's there, but, I kind of feel like we just never forget what we're doing. We're building solutions to our customers' problems. AI is just a part of the toolkit. ML is part of the toolkit. So,
awesome.
yeah.
So Darren, I just want to go back to you and just a little bit about because I think we've started going down the agentic AI path with some of the things that Aonghus was talking about, but with the MCP protocol,
the MCP server,
what's
yes,
the agentic protocol? What are the most interesting things that you guys have learned so far?
We've learned a lot. We've learned it's still very early days, and it pretty much what Damien's talking about, and Aonghus, it's very early. The biggest things we've realized is the MCP spec is changing daily and expanding daily, and I think it's because we're all kind of working out how to improve it. And it's been great from a community perspective because a lot of the AI community is on board with the specification, which makes it's kind of snowballing into something now. But what I'm really seeing is how the MCP server can help direct the agentic AI into making the right decision. And through things what they call elicitations and other types of tools through the spec, where at the moment not all LLMs are the same. Like if you have an on-device LLM, it may not interpret the tool usage as well as it could, as if you were using Claude or Sonnet or ChatGPT, where they'll just use it instantly. They know what to do. So what we're building is, I think the ability to bring in those guardrails that Damien's talking about, just in what we're doing, which is forms and agreements. So we've got these, like the spec will help kind of guide the LLM, and then we start to talk about what Aonghus is talking about, where you've got a fully autonomous agentic AI with these tools from multiple servers, and it can start to make these decisions without any help from the outside. But I still think we're quite a way away from it. Yeah.
I think the bit with that, David, too, is like it doesn't need to sit all in one bucket. And that's
No.
where, like, for us, we will never have a fully agentic system for our customer. You know, I'd say some of the roles that a customer has will absolutely, you know, become
Yep.
more almost 100% agentic in the way I engage with our system. There'll be others that aren't. But it's that sort of it's letting the customer push into the bucket they need to sort of meld the combination that works for them. And I think that you know, in the sense of being AI first, I think that's a buzzword too. But you know, from our sense, we repositioned all our code at the start of the year so it could be consistently understood by AI. That's just purely internal purposes. But you know, in the sense of the way we write our where our code is, you know, sort of been re-architected in a sense, that's AI first, you know, in the way that it can be used. But it's also benefits people. You know, you've got dozens of different people building something. Of course, you're going to get divergence in the way it's written. And so it's just tidying up some of that. And I think that's where, you know, using AI to deliver the best possible outcome for the customer, that starts internally with us. That starts with the customer using it in some of their platform facing aspects. It starts with the data sets they use. You know, in the future, we're probably going to use it, or we're very close to actually using it to write integrations, right? Like parts of our integration library where like through webhook libraries, like giving people some turnkey stuff in essence that we haven't even had to engage with the third party around. And that's the bit that starts to get like really interesting about how we can just iterate. And to your point, Kylie, like, does the product move too far from the customer? I think AI, if it's used properly, gives us the opportunity to actually reduce that iteration with the customer. The product will always be wrong when it goes to the customer. That's just like an assumption that has to be made. And it's like, okay, how can we push the product more sort of at a higher cadence to the customer to get that feedback, rather than this massive like release schedule that's always wrong, and then you've got this massive like feedback schedule. Like, we're pushing code every day into production, and a customer will always just see this like slight change in the system. And I think that for us, like, that works for us, but it may not work for, you know, in the sense of sort of Leann's business. I think, you know, banks might shit themselves if, or broadcast that, banks might, you know, get a bit wary of all the time. There's this sort of like change, even though it delivers the best outcome for them. And that's like, okay, how can we mollycoddle the customer basically so that they understand and are comfortable with the outcomes that are being delivered to them? Because that's really all that matters at the end of the day. That's what they pay for.
Absolutely. And it's an interesting conversation because, in fact, we've been using forms of AI for years. They just don't always call it that, right? So we've been having facial, you know, OCR labs and facial recognition, etc. We've been using it for years, but now it's AI. So part of our job is to demystify it for our banks and lenders. And I mean, frankly, sometimes I don't care what it's called, as long as it's doing the job it needs to do for our customer and user. But there is a distinction between how we demystify it for our banks and lenders, because I think you elegantly put it, they do shit themselves at times.
Scientific.
And so, Kylie, I think the thing to remember here is when you talk about agentic AI and autonomous type AI, everyone thinks, well, they think of it as a person and that they can do anything and everything within the business. But I think, you know, the early agentic AI is very, very isolated and, you know, has a very small context to try and make it, you know, easier to handle the memory and all those types of things. So you'll have roles within the business which could be replaced by agentic AI, but very, very narrow, very small, you know, job descriptions if you want to treat them like people, and that's again where the tools coming in will help the agentic AI make those right decisions. Otherwise, you need to, you know, think of the system prompting as your onboarding and training manual for an employee, you know, and it can only be X long before you run out of context. So you need to keep it as short and concise as possible so that they don't go off and do the wrong thing. So yeah, and I just noticed a question from Darren on the chat. Is there anyone out there building Proptech specific AI code or MCP servers that can be applied industry wide? Well, we are. We're going to build. Not only are we building MCP servers for obviously forms and agreements, we'll be doing other tools like address matching, property address lookups, things like that, which AI needs and particularly agentic AI needs down the track, being able to do those things. So yeah, it's as I said, it's still very early days from that perspective.
So what are some of the things that as an industry we should be advocating for in order to achieve best practice?
For our customers or for Proptech?
For our customer, so for ourselves, and then also because if we have standards and best practices and we communicate them, then our customers know what to look for when they're seeking best practice.
I guess I would just reiterate that it's about looking under the hood and knowing who you're partnering with and what's happening to the data, where is it happening, and what are the vulnerabilities there. And I think the comment earlier on there was a comment earlier about testing. It's feedback loops. And my third comment would be, I don't think AI lives with any one person anymore. We don't have an AI team or the AI expert in an organisation. I think it's upon us all to be articulate and to be well versed in AI and application of it, so we can understand it, we can interpret it, we can scrutinise it. When we look at, I heard a quote the other day that it is estimated we spend $1 billion a day in research on AI, and a quarter of the world's wealth is reinvested into R&D on AI. Like, it's not going anywhere. So it's incumbent on all of us to do and to be well versed in it.
So there's incentive to sell the AI hype with that level of investment.
There is.
Yeah, I think from a customer's perspective, I think we have a bit of a responsibility. We have a high responsibility to make sure we're not walking them into breaches of the Privacy Act or security breaches. And there's good best practice that we can do at a dev level, but like end-to-end encryption and making sure data is processed here in Australia and whatnot. Goes, there's some basic things you can do there, but from a customer's perspective, I reckon the context behind everything everyone's saying today, context is king, right? And garbage in, garbage out. That's something that's been spoken about till we're all blue in the face for years and years and years. But for our customers, the quality of outputs that they can expect to get from agentic platforms is going to be very much correlated to the quality of data that they're inputting. So I would encourage anyone in, say, the real estate world, get really serious about the data hygiene and best practices around that. And the more you can, and also, when it comes to selecting your props, your tech stack, I think connection and connectivity is really highly important. I think channel of choice is a good word. And I think if you've used selecting systems that are closed and you can't even access your own data back, that's going to really limit your context window to actually provide the context needed to perform really high-level problem-solving agentic functions. So that's something I think is, and I'm seeing that in the Proptech world, that there is a movement towards channel of choice, which is great. And I think anyone that sort of excludes themselves may do so at their own peril, because I think customers, I'm already seeing customers asking about that. So, I think that will...
I'm going to throw a totally different perspective in here if I can. So we run everything on our own infrastructure. Like, everything that sits in our platform that a customer has runs on our own, it's cloud infrastructure, but it's on dedicated infrastructure. We probably run like 5 terabytes of compute. Like, it's a significant amount of compute. We'd have like 50 servers running. So like enormous amount of, of heavy sort of compute. But if a customer wants to benefit from benchmarking, they must opt into a multi-region model for that. And the reason that we do that is because it reduces the bias that you get within a region. So in Australia, the way a customer manages, their gutter, certain pretty consistent among them. But if you are in Australia and you have a membrane roof, there are a tiny number of buildings that have membrane roofs. In the US, everyone's got membrane roofs. So actually, for us to give a better product to our customer, we need that data to move across regions. We don't have personally identifiable information, and so that's a benefit to our setup. But certainly, if a customer wants the benefit of sort of the benchmark, and that's totally anonymized. Like everything that is stored in a multi-region sense for a customer is totally anonymized. The customer would know it's being stored in that way, etc. But if they said to us, okay, we want it to be, within a specific region, we say, okay, but these are the restrictions that then happen on the product. And unless there is a regulatory requirement, basically for a customer, very few would opt in for that. So example here in Australia is like defence or, critical infrastructure, they're obviously impacted. But there are ways that, I'm actually a big advocate of a multi-region setup in a sense for a customer, because for an Australian customer, being able to access a US benchmark data set opens you up to like 50 times better inference. And so for a customer, I think it's a much better outcome. And often they, are terrified around where data moves. But I say, okay, why are you terrified? Because it's moving in a place. It all runs on our own infrastructure. So I can tell you absolutely where any data that sits in the system, unless the customer has a third-party integration, that data does not move off our system ever. And so,
are you storing that? So you would be storing that here and then anonymizing it though if you push offshore, right?
Yeah, but there's no PII, so it makes it a lot easier. Like that's the thing. Like
absolutely. But I think there's this skew around what needs to be done to be regulatory sort of compliant in a tech stack sense. But in the sense of an Australian provider, cloud here costs 30 or 40% more than it would in a US region. And so, like all of our US customers are served from US first instances, all Australian customers are served from Australian first instances. But where we run that sort of inference depends on the region that these customers are sitting in. But it costs a lot more here, and there's a lot more restrictions on what can be done. And we sit across all cloud providers basically. So I think we have good exposure to it in a sense. And I really appreciate when people have to all have it onshore, because that actually costs us a lot more money.
Mm.
So if you what should we be telling our clients they should be looking for? So we're telling them that they should have their data as clean as possible. They should be clear about where you guys are, where their data ends and where your data starts, and the benefit, what the value exchange is by allowing us as Proptechs to have access to their data sets. Is there anything else that they should be that they should be doing from their end to support better?
Most of it is common sense.
Common sense is not that common.
No, but Sam Altman, he came out with recently saying that every single conversation on ChatGPT is recorded and could be used against you. So if you're using it as a therapist, chances are that it's probably not the right use case. But so and that's the thing. So AI, like Leann said before, AI is here. Whether you like it or not, it is here. It's going to be used. It is being used. It's being used instead of Google and all those types of things. It's going to infiltrate your platform, either whether it's going to simulate a person using your website or if it's going to use your API directly. So we are better off being as open and transparent box as possible to make sure that our customers can make the right decisions. Because at the end of the day, you can only control so much. So we've got these MCP servers which will guide them in the right direction, but they can still hook it up to ChatGPT and potentially send that information to someone else, or they right now they could get an agreement and they could store it on another server somewhere else, and it gets it gets infiltrated. So there's only so much we can do, but obviously best practice is always the best way to go.
That's maybe where, as an association, the value to a customer, I don't think there's much value in AI standards, because I think that's a super reactive thing. But can we actually help customers buy AI smarter? So when we do an IT assessment, 80% of them are based on on-prem software install. And it's like, that hasn't been a thing for 10 years. Why are we getting these assessments? And I think that's how can we help outcomes that they by AI. Like, what are the outcomes you're seeking? Like, it's almost like a better education. These events, these sort of webinars, I think actually really help, and maybe pulling in some examples with actual customers going like, this is how we saw value in Asseti. This is how we used it. We thought this was totally useless, and we didn't actually dive into this aspect of it, but we thought these other aspects were really great, because it lets people understand the use case, what the outcome that delivered, for them, and why that actually existed in an ROI sense.
Can I add to that, Angus? I think one of the things that many organisations can do is to rethink how they do procurement and due diligence. If you think about the way that we used to do things, if you look at on-prem servers, or every instance got its own server, it's not the way that businesses, a lot of the newer stacks and newer tech companies are working. And I don't think procurement processes and due diligence processes caught up with that. And in fact, we can often get a steer on whether we think there's going to be an adoption of AI or something innovative just by an organisation's procurement processes and due diligence in terms of their risk, not their risk appetite, their change appetite, their readiness for change and adoption of new tech.
That's really interesting. That could actually really cut short a whole lot of sales calls, couldn't it? You could basically say to people before they, when they inquire about it, couldn't we have a look at your procurement documentation and due diligence processes, and then basically say, yeah, now, yeah, no, you can't buy us.
I could peg the ones that where, if I look at their due diligence and procurement, I can tell you exactly the ones that are change ready and the ones that aren't. And, I think organisations need to be change ready, but that requires the education. That requires everyone to have an understanding of AI, because it, really isn't going anywhere, as we all know.
Yeah, Darren Fry's just shared that on-prem's now the equivalent of black and white TV, so I think that's very apt. Hey, I'm conscious of the time. We might just do a quick comment from everybody to wrap up. And so, Angus, do you want to go next? Like, what's your final thought?
Oh, I think AI is exciting, but knowing why it's exciting is probably the thing that people need to understand. Because I think it's exciting for why I find AI exciting is vastly different to what our customer does, but it's still the same catchword, and we might be the same excited about it. So I think knowing why it's exciting is probably the thing people should think about in the shower, maybe. Yeah.
Leann?
My final thoughts are, and it's probably apropos of the elephant that's behind me, it's safe and secure, but a vision of the future. And for us, it's always staying ahead of the game. And I'm really curious what's happening in the world of machine experiences. So I'll leave that for everyone to consider. MX, alongside of UX and CX and all the other X's in the world. It'll be interesting to see what happens with AI, with machine experience and machine to machine.
Damien?
It's exciting times. I would, I guess, encourage, our customers to remain curious and maybe test and familiarise yourself with this space, because it is coming, whether you like it or not. But don't give in to the fear of missing out or the fear of being replaced. And I think training, getting that attitude embedded in your team so that they're welcoming or embracing change, but then mapping those tools that you're maybe exploring to real world problems that you have. So that's what it's all about: solving problems, doing things more efficiently, productive. That's what I would end with.
Yeah, David, last thought.
I'm excited about what the Proptech community will come up with. And that's, I guess, historically, we FormsI was the first ever open API forms platform in Australia, and we encouraged innovation from startups who, didn't have to go through a paywall or those types of things. They're the things that I met when I first started my business. I had to pay $10,000 to get access to an API, all those types of things. And that's why we want to build these MCP servers, so that we can encourage the innovation. So, I might have one idea, but someone else might use this thing in a completely different way, which completely revolutionizes the how things happen. And we've never thought of it, so that's what I'm excited about. And I know it's early days, the toddlers, but it's fun. It's fun as well. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, awesome. So look, guys, thank you so much for your time. Just a quick summary on some of the things that I've heard is that as PropTechs, we need to be putting our customer first, not AI first. And we really need to be thinking about the use case through the view of what our customers is. We need to be creating clear boxes, not black boxes when it comes to AI, so that everyone is very clear on what's in there. Our customers' knowledge, and in fact, even their processes and systems for the way that they do things at the moment, is an important part of both the data that they're going to supply to us and even whether they are going to be able to use us or not, or whether their practices are so out of date that they're going to struggle. We need to be really clear, I guess, with our customers on where their data starts and where our PropTech starts and where our PropTech ends, and so therefore what that kind of ecosystem looks like. We need to be really transparent around where data is processed, who we partner with. And our clients themselves, I think what I've heard in all of this is that what are their policies? They need to be asking us questions, and we need to be really transparent around things like what are our policies and protocols around data management, around security, privacy, feedback loops, where our data is hosted and why it's hosted there, and be really kind of open around all of that stuff. What we've heard is that context is king. I love this idea of, well, I don't love this idea, but I'm terrified of context rot. That's now my new favourite saying. And that the quality of the outputs is directly related to the quality of the data. That we need to be a channel of choice. And I think this idea around thinking about procurement processes and due diligence is and whether our clients have got the right processes in place and what we should be encouraging them to replace those with could be quite powerful here too. I think one of the most important and exciting things that I hear about AI though is that we've gone from having to think like the machine to being able to have conversations with the machine, and often and what I see sort of generationally, and I find myself having to constantly think like this too, is that it's no longer about trying to think about what question can I ask? And and AI really opens us up to being curious. And so asking lots of questions, because now we get answers as opposed to having to think of the right prompt to type in. And so I think this whole idea of like, well, I don't know what I don't know, but I know I've got lots of questions, and not being afraid to treat the AI like it is a slightly stupid intern, because we do have to train them, and we have to have, as PropTechs, really strong training and helping our clients have, strong training and processes for that. So look, David, Damien, Leann, Aonghus, thank you so much for an awesome conversation. Thank you everybody on the call who joined us. We will be recording this, or we have recorded this, and we will be sharing it out afterwards. It's been a great conversation. We will definitely be continuing it and certainly following it up at the PropTech Forum in Melbourne in November. Stay tuned. We'll be releasing details on that soon. So thanks everybody, and we hope to see you at the end of next month for another cracking PropTech panel topic to come very shortly. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Kylie. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,